steps for nurturing this identity loyalty concept. The first thing is, guys, I have to preach this from the mountaintop. You have to proactively communicate your brand identity. I want you to watch this, and I want you to tell me afterwards, what is Apple doing in this message related to communicating aspects about who they are as a brand, but also who their typical user is.
Hello, I'm Mac. I'm a PC. Ready to get started?
No, not quite. Got a lot to do. What's your big plan?
I might make a movie or maybe create a website, try my Hilton camera. I can do it all right out of the box. So what about you?
Well, first I got to download those new drivers, and I got to erase the trial software that came on my hard drive. And I've got a lot of manuals to read.
You know, it sounds like you have a lot of stuff to do before you do any stuff, so I'm just gonna get started, so I'm kind of excited. Let me know when you're ready.
Actually, the rest of me's in some other boxes, so.
This is brilliant. And again, I'm not an Apple fan, but I'm a fan of great marketing. What are they doing here? What is Apple communicating to you here? A couple of things. Simplicity, what else? Better, cool, what else? Different, young, what else? Creative and hip. What are they saying about Microsoft? Hard to use, nerdy, old, out of date, archaic, right? All of these different things. My point is this, guys. Proactively communicate your brand identity. Otherwise, your competitor is going to do it for you. You got to catch this. You have to be controlling your brand. You have to be controlling your brand. Don't let someone else come in and identify your brand to your segment for you, right? Because this is what happens when you have to then respond to this kind of.
Hello, I'm a PC, and I've been made into a stereotype.
I'm a PC and I wear a suit.
I'm a PC and I wear a suit.
I'm Wharton airtight suit.
And I don't wear a suit.
And I don't wear tweed.
I'm a PC and I don't like tweed.
I'm a PC and I wear headbands.
I'm a PC. This is where I work.
And these are my employees.
This is my cubicle.
Space was my office.
This is my office.
I'm a PC, and this is my office.
What do you think about that? Did that work? Mm-hmm. Kind of lukewarm. Yeah, why? Defensive. Yeah, right? So now basically you're reinforcing these stereotypes because you think it's important enough to respond to. Right? I tell you, and I love Microsoft. I got a lot of students working at Microsoft. And I tell them all the time, listen, don't worry about what the other guy's doing. Build Microsoft's brand. Build Microsoft's brand, right? Don't get in this like fight between Apple. They're very good at this identity thing. You have to now figure out how you're going to get good at this by figuring out who your brand is. And I've had a lot of conversations with the new leadership at Microsoft, and there's a slow change happening there, right? Because the problem with Microsoft has always been this notion of, and kind of a really strong engineering focus. We build these great products, then we worry about the customer a little bit later, right? Apple's doing the opposite, right? And so my argument here is start with your customer. Think about that why question from Simon Sinek. Think about measuring and understanding who your customer is, and then connect those two dots, and you're able to do something, right? It's a hard thing to do to become suddenly this more consumer-centric sort of company, but even Microsoft knows that they have to do that, and they've started trying to take steps in the direction of moving toward this notion. So, step 2, fiercely protect, kind of as I was mentioning earlier, fiercely protect your brand identity. Here you want to invite your customers to join in, right? So part of what allows the power of identity to happen is because consumers feel like they are co-creating this thing with you. They feel like it. They feel like they are co-creating this thing with you. So what you want to do in these instances is you want to bring them in and you want to give them some ownership of the brand in various different ways that I'll talk about that are out there, especially in the day and age of social media where these things are pretty powerful. Step 3, this is huge, right? You have to be genuine and authentic. So here's what we find in the research. Our consumers are not stupid. They can sniff out a marketing gimmick miles away, right? They can sniff out a marketing gimmick miles away. You have to demonstrate and signal to consumers, I am in this lifestyle just like you. I am part of this aspiration that you share, that you have. You got to do it in a credible way. You got to do it in a very authentic way. One of the great brands that I talk about that we've studied in this context is a brand called Red Bull. Who knows Red Bull? Raise your hand if you drink Red Bull. Oh, wow. Interesting. So why does Red Bull show daredevil skydivers jumping out of basically spaceships at the risk of their own life? Why do they show that? And then
Because I do that.
is that what you do?
Well, I do some things.
Why do you drink Red Bull?
Stay awake.
Okay, but what about, is there anything about Red Bull with the messaging, the narrative that they're putting out there?
It's kind of at the edge. It's cool. It's like
It
awesome.
gives you wings. Listen to me, guys. It gives you wings. It gives you wings. Think about that, right? Individuals who feel like, listen, I'm on the cutting edge. I'm taking on challenges. I take risks on. I don't run from risks, right? I'm looking to stretch my limits. I'm looking to try new things. I'm out there. This is my drink.
This is my drink.
Guys, I can promise you, when I take Red Bull and put it in front of people and blind taste test, they say that's awful, right? Without the brand, right? But with the brand, the narrative, the story says, hey, this is for people who aspire to be part of this lifestyle. The beautiful thing about this is that you can look across different types. This just cuts across demographics, right? You can have basically a 42-year-old daredevil skydiver from Austria, right? Into Red Bull in the exact same way of a 16-year-old Korean kid who's loving hip hop and doing breakdancing, right? It cuts across all of these categories that we are often seduced into wanting to believe are the critical points for marketing, right? This is about lifestyle, this is about aspiration, this is about identity. But it's about credible, it's about authenticity. So when our friends at Red Bull basically said we're going to start showing these events, we're going to start partnering with all of these different extreme sports, we're telling the story over and over and over and over and over and over again in a credible and authentic way, right? The people who are at the top, they believe in those values that were just espoused by our colleague here. They believe in that. It's real to them. Right? And that's part of the reason why they have 50% of the market share in the United States and 80% of the market share globally. So you got to be genuine and authentic. You can't afford for these authentic sort of goof ups, guys. You can't. Here's my friends at Microsoft. I was working on a project with these guys when they launched Windows Phone. It's great. Hey, we're going to hire Jessica Alba. We're going to hire Jessica Alba. She's going to be our spokesperson. It's like, okay, why are you doing that? Well, she's hot right now. Guys, come on. What's the connection between why are you doing? Well, she's really, we think it's a good idea. And then this happens. Right? Ouch. So I talked to my friends, I was like, man, you guys see the thing? What happened? Well, her contract was up, so guys, come on. This is my point. You're trying to get people on board who buy into the values of the identification, the self-expression, all these things, right? You're not looking for a paid spokesperson. You're looking for an advocate, right? You're looking for an advocate, and that's a huge mistake here, right? So again, credible. Step 4, how do you think about creating identity loyalty? By always putting first and foremost, how your audiences are responding to your brand. You have to do research. We at Wharton, we care about data. We don't throw out the intuition and the creativity, sort of the baby with the bathwater. What we try to do is do the research. Do the research that's needed to what? Measure the identity on the customers, relate it to your brand, try to understand what those correlations are, and building a story around that information, those empirics, that then allow you to create a narrative that can resonate along an important identity dimension that matters to your customers. This is not super expensive. Like, you're not going to break the bank doing this. But again, it's shocking how many companies, are not doing these very simple things to try to make these connections with their consumers. Okay? So do the research, guys. Step 5, look for meaningful ways to express your brand's identity. And again, here, this ties back a little bit to the credibility question. What you're trying to do in this context is you're trying to maximize the way that consumers can have opportunities to reinforce who they are through your brand. What the research shows in this is that every single time a strongly identified customer uses your brand and is able to actually have this product, that the reinforcement around that identity strengthens along with their identification with your brand. So you're trying to look for opportunities to help these customers reinforce in a meaningful way relative to your brand's identity and the narrative that you've chosen to try to represent what your brand stands for. Again, the why of your particular brand. Okay? Here's another very interesting example. You probably think I don't like Microsoft. I love Microsoft, but I got to pick on them because they're in a learning phase. I was sitting home watching football as part of this project for this other professional sports team that we were working on. And this came on, so I tweeted about it to my students. I basically saw this picture on Fox Sports, and it's like, oh wow, all of a sudden there's a bunch of Microsoft Surfaces here. Right, so, and I asked my students, oh, that's cool. Microsoft must have cut a deal with Fox Sports Surface product placement. Do you guys think this will help the brand in terms of the purchase funnel? What do you think? Think it hurts or helps? Neither. Why? What is the connection, the logical, psychological connection between an individual strongly identified with their NFL team and the Microsoft Surface? What's the why? What's the reason why they should care about being connected to this particular product, right? We ran a study where we actually tried to answer that question, some of my students, and what we found was we measured like strength of identification across a bunch of fans of the NFL on a random sample that we did of participants across the United States and their teams, and we were asking them, questions about recall. Had you seen the Surface, the Surface product on any of the events that you watched recently? What do you think the percentage of recall, unaided recall, was about the Microsoft Surface 5 weeks after this partnership was created? -10%. Zero. Like, wow. Look, I get an awareness play. I understand that. But you can't just jump out there and say, I got eyeballs. You have to say, listen, I need to try to create connection here. Because if you're not thinking about who am I as a brand, and you're not aware that your other guy, the competitor, has created an entire category that has become the vernacular for that brand, then this is what happens. Right? Oops. Like, I don't know about you guys, but 400 million is a lot to me. Okay? And but it goes back to that point, right? Apple's creating, they're becoming so part of the self-expressive nature of their consumer. They're creating language. Guys, they're creating language for their consumers to use, and that language is just so much there that, yeah, you see some, oh yeah, that's like an iPad. That's an iPad. You're not thinking about, oh, that's a tablet. You say, that's an iPad. Yeah, he's using his iPad. Right? That's the power of knowing your customer at the deepest level possible. So step 6 basically says use these established and well-validated tools from the literature. Right? Identity loyalty is the goal that we as brand managers were seeking to achieve. We're trying to make a deeper connection. We're trying to not become just business folks, but we're trying to become ethnographers, psychologists, who can step inside our consumers' heads and understand them in a very deep way relative to who they are in terms of their self-expression, their identities, their aspirations. And we're trying to create a connection by doing the research, the empirics, the analysis that allows us to start being a little bit smarter about what we're doing with respect to our consumers. So step 7, always be proactively thinking about the next phase of your brand's identity and how it aligns with your customer identity, right? And my point here is basically this. Every time I get up in the morning, right? If I'm going to be managing a brand or thinking about, if I'm the steward of this brand, my job is to get up in the morning and go to my brand narrative and look at it and think about it and make sure, okay, it's salient in my mind. Now I go about my business in terms of what I'm doing, in terms of decision making. And I'm always thinking about how can I make sure that my brand is aligning with the consumer's identity. Because the power of brand identification and identity loyalty really allows me some buffering between what competitors can do in terms of coming in and unseating my efforts in terms of brand building. Okay. So here are the final sort of critical takeaways for you guys, right? Collect big and small data on your customers every opportunity. This blows my mind. This absolutely blows my mind. I go to these companies and they either one of two things. They either have no data or they have data but don't use it. Oh man, it just blows my mind. It's crazy. It's like they spent money to gather information. It's like, okay, look, what are you doing with it? Oh, well, we've got the data over here. And, okay, let's look at, well, we've already analyzed it. We've decided what we're going to do. And a lot of times what we find in companies is that they collect data so that they can feel confident, basically, in doing what they were going to do anyway. So they feel like the decision is justified because they have data. It should never work that way. Let the data speak to you. Let the data emerge, and let the data be data-driven in terms of trying to answer these particular questions. So collect big and small data. Use real customer data to develop the narrative. Remember, guys, don't get caught up into this idea that repeat purchases is necessarily the loyalty you're trying to get at, because repeat purchases imply but do not guarantee loyalty, right? If it turns out that people are loyal because of price, then the first competitor that comes in and lowers price, your customer's gone, right? What does identity loyalty allow you to do? It allows you to create a deeper connection that price doesn't matter. We saw in all those quantitative analyses, right? Price premiums, they want to pay it, they will pay it. All of these different things. That creates a buffer for you to be able to make sure that you have some defense when competitors start trying to unseat you. So identity loyalty is the concept we talked about today. It relies less on external switching costs, more on internal switching costs. Think about this for a second. So if your brand is connected to identity, then what's it going to take for a customer to leave your brand? It's going to take them to have to abandon their own identity. That's deep, right? Think about that. Think about that as a mechanism to protect the value that you're developing through these processes of identity loyalty. So depict your customers engaging with your brand in ways that they want to see themselves, right? These are what the iconic brands do very well. And then finally, maintain authenticity of your efforts in identity loyalty. Otherwise, it falls short, right? So if you haven't well-defined your brand, you're going to have challenges if you're going to try to execute on this particular strategy. Guys, listen to me. I'm trying to take y'all there. I'm trying to listen. Look, this person here is not like, gee, I think I like Nike a little bit. Right? You're trying to get to this level where your customer, and I want, we want our school to be like this, where we feel, where people, when you come on campus, I bleed Wharton. Right? I'm trying to take you guys this identity, loyalty, self-expression, connection. If you want to do this stuff, if you're interested in doing this stuff, contact me and we'll do it together. And that's it for my talk. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.